God, we love you tonight. We're so thankful that you're here in our midst. God, we thank you for your eternal word that's been written and established in heaven, that it's never going to be altered or changed, that it's proceeded from the mouth of God, and from it we receive wisdom and understanding of how we're to be and how we're supposed to operate. Father, we just ask you right now to give us eyes that see, hearts that hear, ears that hear, hearts that will understand. And God, and we just purpose right now to put it into practice and do it in Jesus' name, amen. All right. Well, tonight is our last night together on this subject. And we talked a little bit last week about the difference between what submission really is. So many people are just confused about even what it is. It's no wonder that they don't put it into practice in their life because they don't even really understand what it is. But now we all do. It's it's when we don't agree that we have the opportunity to then submit to an authority that God has placed in our life. And obviously we're all on this road now, endeavoring to put our lives in a place where we're at least got it on our thinking, where we're submitting ourselves to God, His plan for our life, His direction for our life, His will for our life. And we are so many people, I don't think, even give that a second thought. They don't even think about, what would God think about this? Is this really God's will for my life, or is it just something that I want to do? But the thing that I want to talk to you tonight about is some reasons why people don't submit. Reasons why people won't submit their lives fully to God. And one of the, there's a lot of different reasons. The one is just, they've never been taught. People or kids should be taught from an early age that they should submit themselves to their parents. And this is something that's it's throughout the Word. It's not just some random thing that we find in the Word where, this one verse I've been, locking in on is James chapter 4. But it's throughout the entire Bible, this subject of submission, this subject of obedience, the subject of that there is authority and that we're to honor it, submit ourselves to it. And the idea of a child, children should be taught at an early age that, man, it costs to be rebellious, to not submit. And, the Bible goes so far as to say this to children is that, to obey your parents, which is right in the Lord, that it may go well with you and that you live a long time on the earth. Well, why would it be that important to God that how long you live and really how well you do in life is all directly connected to your submission? I don't know that you've ever really connected those dots or thought about it too much, but it's the very first instruction that we received. We were all children at one time, and one of the first things that we should learn and understand is that we're to submit ourselves to authority that's over us. And so much so, and really I think that why it is that important to God that He would say, not only is it going to determine how well you do in life, it says that it may go well with you and that you live, and it'll determine how long you live on the earth, and how well you do on the earth is how well you're able to walk in submission and to respect or honor authority that's over you in your life. And it's got everything to do with this kingdom. This kingdom is operated on a structure of authority, and it's ruled by the law of love. And it's ruled by, a king, and he expects, because he has first loved us and laid his life down and taken our place, he expects us to submit to that love and to follow him. And, and it's really the same thing with the parent-child relationship. It's the exact same thing. Parents should love their kids enough to demand their submission and demand that they, that they obey them. And if you just think about it in your natural mind, it's, and think it through, you can see, man, people that are just rebellious and they can't submit to anything, man, it goes bad for them. Man, prisons are full of people. I go to the prisons and go to jails, and and I deal with people that are, far worse shape than you guys in this room. And it's what it is at the end of the day, man, is they never learned how to submit. at the end of the day, they never had any respect for anything other than themselves. And so, anyway, man, we should be taught this in an early age. Lack of faith, man. It takes faith to be able to trust God and to deal with people. To just to be able to pray, shut your mouth about it, and let God deal with it. So, David prayed and put it in God's hands about Saul. Saul was the king. David had been anointed the king to be the king, and Saul and he just said, it's not going to come by my hand. He had the opportunity time after time to take this guy out, and he said, I won't touch the Lord's anointed. And at this point, this man was so backslidden that he was consulting with witches. He was leading the country astray. He was in absolute rebellion against God, the ways of God. And yet, here you got David calling him, one, saying he's the Lord's anointed, and two, saying it's not going to come by my hand. I'm not going to take him. I'm not going to touch the Lord's anointed. And you can see, just this man's heart in the matter, and you can see that he had some faith. He had some faith to trust that God was going to deal with the situation, that God was going to have to take him out, that he wasn't going to take matters into his own hands in the arm of his own flesh and deal with the situation. So it took some faith, didn't it, to be in that situation? I mean, think about it. This man's trying to hunt him down, kill him like a back alley dog. He's on his trail. He's got the entire resources of the nation chasing this one man who's been anointed to be the king. And here's this guy, and the Bible says, man, he was a man after God's own heart. And he trusted God, put it in God's hands, and it took faith to do that. Pride is what we're going to talk about tonight, is a big reason why people won't submit themselves, why they fail to submit, they fail to, operate in this kingdom the way it's intended to be operated. Grace is everything. And man, it's just everything in life is by grace. Everything in this kingdom, we attain it by grace. And God said that he gives his grace to who? To the humble people, right? He resists the proud, but he gives his grace to the humble. And he said, therefore, because of this, then we should submit ourselves to God. Resist the devil and he'll flee from you. But the fact is that it says, we are to humble ourselves. It's not something that God is going to do for you. All of this kingdom, God is not pushy. He's not a dictator. He is not a ruler. He is one that will get out in front and call and lead. And he'll lead by example. But he will not make you do anything. The very first thing that you did when you came into this kingdom was you submitted. You said, Jesus, I submit my life to you. I make you Lord or Master of my life. You're right, I'm wrong, and I repent. Something like that, right? You're wrong, or I'm sorry. You're right, I'm wrong, and I'm going to humble myself and admit that I did things that were against you, against your kingdom, against your ways, and I'm going to do what? I'm going to make you Lord of my life. I'm going to submit my life to your lordship. And maybe you didn't realize that's what you were doing, but I'm telling you, that is entry level into the kingdom. Nobody gets into the kingdom without doing those two things, humbling themselves and submitting themselves. And that's the whole battle of our wills right there, is that it's pride that'll keep somebody from entering into this kingdom and going to hell. So God said that he would give his grace to who? To the humble people. So the great key to accomplishing more in this kingdom, and the great key to reaching our destination, to being used by God, is more grace then, right? Or more humility. It's interchangeable. So it should be on our list of things that we are after, things that we're attaining towards, is to get more grace in our life. Man, more grace means more anointing. It means more wisdom, more understanding, more insight. It means more ministry. It means more money. It means more blessing. It means anything that's in heaven that we need on earth it gets here by grace. And the way that we get to that grace is by our humility. So without humility, you're not getting to the grace, which is why God said, hey, I resist the proud, but I give my grace to the humble. So if you're proud, you got a problem. And we all are. And that's I'm going to point that out to you tonight. Hopefully. I'm going to make a case of it anyway. So a great key to accomplishing more is humility. So the thing, we have to define what is then humility. In Romans 12, chapter 3, it says this: don't think of yourself more highly than you ought to think, but think soberly. In other words, humility is just a sober, realistic rating of itself. It doesn't estimate itself above or beyond its value. It simply believes the truth about itself. That's what humility is. It just simply believes the truth about itself. It's a sober, realistic evaluation of itself. It doesn't go beyond that and think anything more than it. It says don't think more highly of yourself. It doesn't say don't think highly of yourself. It says don't think more highly of yourself. Go beyond and think more highly than you should. Pride is just the opposite of that. It's high-minded. It's an exalted, exaggerated opinion of itself. It goes beyond a sober, realistic evaluation and goes on and believes lies. It's got an exaggerated opinion, a high-minded viewpoint of itself. If you're in pride, you believe lies and are deceived. Obadiah 1:3 says this, that the pride of your heart has deceived you. Speaking of the enemy when he was kicked out of heaven, it says the pride of his own heart has deceived him. So pride is something that blinds and deceives you. I mean, the enemy was in a place, and we don't know how long, where he was in the perfect majesty of heaven, doing all kinds of things within the kingdom. And somehow in this, he got to thinking that he was actually going to take what was given him and entrusted him by God and use it against God to somehow overthrow the kingdom of heaven. I mean, you got to be blind to think that you're going to take the things of God and use them to overthrow God. Can you see how blind he was? And it says here in Obadiah 1:3 that the pride of your own heart has blinded you or deceived you. So pride is blind, it's deceived, it believes lies. So what is pride then? It's thinking highly of yourself. No, it's going beyond that and believing lies. Humility is just the opposite end. It's just believing the truth. So in Numbers 12:3, I've got some. I'm just trying to go through some stuff real quickly here. Numbers 12:3, it says this, that Moses was the meekest man on the earth, and he was also the most used of his generation. I don't think anybody in this room here would argue with the fact that he was the most used man of his generation during his time. And it says in Numbers 12:3 that he was also the most meek man. And I'd never really made that connection between his usability and what God was able to do through his life was directly connected to his meekness or to his humility. But that all ties together with James chapter 4, doesn't it? When it says that God gives his grace to the humble, which obviously grace is everything that is in the kingdom of heaven that he wants to get into somebody's life to use it, for his good on the earth here. And yet, so he was the most used of his generation. The level of humility that we walk in determines the level of usefulness that we are to God. It determines how far we're going to go with God. Once you run out of humility, you've run out of usefulness in the kingdom. It's as far as you can go. If you're in pride about where you are right now in life, then God can't get you any further. If you're in pride about what you have, what you've done, what you've accomplished right now, then you're stuck. You can't get any further than that. God can't get you any further than that. He can only work with people that have humility about them. So we have to be able to grow in humility to be able to grow in God and become useful to this in this kingdom. Paul said this. He said, this is in Ephesians chapter 3 and verse 8. Nobody in this room would argue, he was the most used of his generation. Wouldn't you agree? He wrote 2/3 of the New Testament. Most used by God in his generation. Ephesians 3:8, he says this. He said, I labored more abundantly than all of you. yet not I, but the grace that was in me. So this explains perfectly what I'm saying to you. He got more accomplished than all the rest of them. The people that actually walked with Jesus, Peter, James, John. He said, I labored more abundantly than all you guys, yet not I, but the grace that was in me. So pride would say, I did it. But he was very aware that it wasn't him that accomplished it. He was very aware that it was the grace working through his life that enabled him to accomplish more and get more done than all the rest of those guys. It wasn't a bravado statement. He wasn't trying to say, well, I got more, it was just the truth. It was just reality. And again, what is humility? It's the truth. So it wasn't this statement that went beyond. It was a simple statement of truth, and yet he recognized in it, even though he was able to get more done than the rest of those guys, he recognized that it was because of this grace that he was walking in. So we know this, that there had to be humility in his life, right? And he goes on to say, I am least than all the saints. I am less than the least, is what he said. I am less than the least of all the apostles. First he said in one place, and then another place he said, I am less than the least of all the saints. So he even lowered himself even further in his view of himself and his position and the way he saw himself. He said, I am less than the least of all the apostles. Yet I got more done than all the rest of them. So he's not high-minded. He's not conceited. He's not going beyond a sober evaluation of himself. He's just simply stating the truth, right? And furthermore, he's not taking credit for it in and of himself. He's saying it was the grace that was operating in his life that enabled him to get it done. So he was the most used of his generation. So was he? And you have to raise this question then: was Paul just trying to be humble, or was he being genuine? He was absolutely being genuine, because we know this. Because of what God was able to accomplish through the man's life. This is the way he felt about himself. It's the way he thought of himself. So, there's a great defense against pride is just this, man. You give God his rightful glory and thanks, man. Just develop and cultivate an attitude of thankfulness and gratitude towards him, and an attitude of giving him the recognition that he deserves. Jesus himself, man, he was, and nobody's going to argue with this, he was the most, by far, used of his generation, wasn't he? And yet he said, in throughout eternity, most used in his time and throughout eternity, and he preached, he who exalts himself shall be abased, but he who humbles himself will be exalted. Jesus preached those things. Not only did he preach them, but he lived them. He practiced this himself. He was God from the beginning, and he emptied himself of all of his attributes as God and became obedient to a servant, and became a servant and died a criminal's death. And and this is in Philippians 2, verses 7 through 10. It says he made himself of no reputation, taking the form of a bondservant, coming in the likeness of men, and being found in appearance just as a man. He humbled himself. Notice again, this is not something that God does for you. That humility is not something that God does. You humble yourself. It's not something that just is automatically going to show up in your life. It's something that you have to purpose and make an effort to get to. It's something that you have to cultivate. It's something which tells me this: it's going to be work. It's something. If you've ever grown anything, man, it doesn't just happen by chance. It's not something that's just gonna show up, and one day you're gonna have all this humility that you're walking in your life. Unless you go after it, unless you chase it, unless you cultivate it in your life, you're never going to get to this point where it's yours and you own it, where it's it's an attribute of you. So it says he humbled himself, Jesus, and became obedient to the point of death, even the death of the cross. Therefore, because of that, because of his obedience and his humility, God also highly exalted him and gave him the name which is above all others. So the road to the greatness in this kingdom is the road of humility. So he came down from the highest points of heaven and lowered himself to the belly of the earth. Humility did that. he came from being God, from the highest place of honor, the highest place of glory. He emptied himself of all his glory, of all his attributes as God, humbled himself, and to the point of death and below the earth to the pit. So humility brought the master from there to the pit, and then he was exalted and given a name because of that that's above all others. Whereas pride brought the anointed cherub, who was who the enemy was, from the highest place in heaven of honor and service in the kingdom. It brought him from that place of honor and dignity to the pit. So you can see the contrast. So your flesh loves to hear how wonderful it is, how amazing you are, and it's just our flesh nature wants to hear about how great we are and how amazing we are, and it's just the nature of our pride. It's the nature of our flesh. It's the nature of pride and selfishness. You always have to deal with this. You stay on top of it. It's not something that you just deal with one time and then it's it's nothing that you're going to see again. So let me just slow down for a second here. Pride is a very serious thing. It's the nature of the devil. And I want you to take a good look at how God views pride. And we're going to go over some scriptures here, and I'll read them to you, but you guys just write them down. I don't think they're in your notes, but we're getting to where your notes pick up here just in a second. This is how God views pride. This is how he sees pride. And most of these you can find them in Proverbs. Proverbs 6, verse 16 and 17 says this. There's these things the Lord hates. Yes, 7 are an abomination to him. So here's God's short list of, this is a strong word. This is God's short list of things that he hates, things that are an abomination. At the very top of his list is a proud look. Number 1, God hates it. It's an abomination to him, a proud look. And the very next one, it talks about a lying tongue. And then you go down through there and read through there, and another one has to do with a deceitful one that bears false witness against his neighbor. And you can see that the connection between lies and pride and lies are always intertwined. A lying tongue, a proud look, those that sow discord among the brethren. Again, those things they're rooted in pride. Proverbs 8:13. The fear of the Lord is to hate evil, pride and arrogance in the evil way, and the perverse mouth I hate. So God says, man, I hate evil. I hate the proud and arrogant. I hate the evil way. God hates it. It's an abomination to him. He hates it. Proverbs 16:5. This is not an exhaustive list. I just want you to understand that it's not just one place in the Bible where God talks about his view of this, what he thinks about it. This is what God thinks about the proud. This is what he thinks about pride. This is how he views it. This is how, it's an abomination to him. So this is Proverbs 16:5. Now everyone proud in heart is an abomination to the Lord. Though they join forces, none will go unpunished. So here's, there's more. I think that makes a strong case that, this is something we want to stay away from, man. It's something that, if God hates it, it's an abomination to him. It's something that we need to be on the lookout for in our own lives and make sure that, man, we're getting it out. Here's some of the effects of pride. This is Proverbs 11:2. When pride comes, then comes shame, but with the humble is wisdom. Notice the contrast, shame and wisdom. Pride brings you to a place of shame. Humility brings you to a place of wisdom. Proverbs 15:25, the Lord will destroy the house of the proud, but he will establish the boundary of the widow. Proverbs 16:18, pride goes before destruction, and a haughty spirit before a fall. So before there's destruction, there's pride. Before you can just about mark it down anytime that there's been destruction in your life. If you just back up a few steps, you can find, if you look hard enough, where you stepped into pride. Pride goes before destruction, a haughty spirit before a fall. Proverbs 29:23 says this, a man's pride will bring him low, and the humble in spirit will retain honor. Again, the contrast is either, being brought low or being brought to a place of honor. Humility will bring you to a place of honor. Proverbs 29:23 says this, a man's pride will bring him, I just read you that one. So just in summary, man, God hates it. He despises it. It's an abomination to him. It'll cause us to have destruction in our life. It'll cause us to fall. It's a very serious matter. It's not just some small thing, and it's not some obscure part of the Bible, man. It's all through the Bible. We've been camped out in James here where it talks about that, man, God is, it's in his heart to give us grace. It's in his heart to give us the kingdom. It's in his heart to get our lives to a place where we're taking ground, we're doing exploits, we're enjoying the benefits of this kingdom, and it's all by his grace. And you know, and he's saying, man, humble yourself. Make sure that you take this on as a task in your life to do this. People, so here's some things right here that'll help you to avoid getting into a place of pridefulness. These are 4 in you realities that will help you to guard yourself against pride. You guys ready? All right. Number 1, in yourself, you are nothing. And this, you can find this in Galatians chapter 6:3. It says, if anyone thinks himself to be something, when he is nothing, he deceives himself. Again, man, pride and deception, they go hand in hand. And if you think you're something, when in reality you're nothing, then you're just deceiving yourself. So in yourself, you are nothing. You can't, and then number 2, in yourself, you know nothing. You can find this in 1 Corinthians 8, verses 2 and 3. It says, if anyone thinks he knows anything, he knows nothing yet as he should know it. In him is the all-important words here. So we know so little. People, you know this, man, that some of the people that know everything are the most ignorant people that you ever come across. You ever meet some of those people? They know everything about everything. They're some of the most ignorant people you ever want to. Number 3, in yourself, you have nothing. This is in 1 Corinthians chapter 4 and verse 7. It said, what makes you different from another, and what do you have that you didn't receive? Now, if you did indeed receive it, why do you boast as if you had not received it? So, what's he saying, man, is that why should you be all proud and cocky about something that was just given to you anyway? Everything that we have has been given to us. Our life itself, man, God gave it to us. Any wisdom, insight, understanding that we have, man, it all came from him. And he said that, and then in, this is number 4. So in yourself you have nothing. And number 4 is, in yourself you can do nothing. This is found in John chapter 15 and verse 5. Jesus said this, I'm the vine, you're the branches. He who abides in me and I in him beareth much fruit. For without me you can do nothing. So let's summarize here. In yourself, you are nothing. You know nothing. You can do nothing. And you have nothing. So we're 0. These things right here, man, they'll guard you against pride. Because if you realize, man, that everything that you have, you received, then you don't have to pretend like it was you and not God that handed it to you, not God that gave it to you. And what that does is it helps you to stay thankful and grateful and honor the one that actually gave it to you, instead of taking credit for it yourself, which is what pride does. Pride wants to take the credit for itself, and and here's the good news about all that, is that you're not by yourself. In and of yourself, you have nothing, can do nothing, but you're not by yourself. In him, we can do all things. In him, we can accomplish everything. And that's incredible news right there, though. But don't leave out those 2 all important words, in him. In you, you are nothing, you have nothing, can do nothing, and you know nothing. Anything that you do know, you got it from him. So just start to, and I know, man, that may seem weird to you to think that way, but I'm just telling you, man, those are 4 in you realities. There's a whole lot of in him realities that are really cool, right? But that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about in you realities. So God should have the glory for the things that he's done. Don't take credit, don't take the place where for the things that he's done for you and that he's gifted you with and talented you with, given you. So you remember last week when I said this, I give you this quote from Roger. It says, when you find some place where the Lord said something, it's a great time just to be quiet, just shut up and not say anything more, just listen. Remember that, and not only listen, but get to doing what he said to do. And you know, you can find this all throughout the Bible, but you know, go clear back to Cain and Abel. Well, really, you go back to Adam and Eve, but Cain and Abel, God said to Cain, you know, he'd brought him the gift or an offering, sacrifice, a tithe, really what it was, and he was his offering was rejected because there was elements of pride in it and elements of selfishness and pride, and we ain't going into all that, but that's why God rejected it, and then you find this. It says, and the Lord said to Cain. So what should he have done, man? He should have opened his ears. He should have listened. Humility would have listened to the next statements. Humility would have been able to hear what was the creator of everything is speaking to this man. And he said to him, why are you downcast? Why are you, I'm messing it up. He said, why are you angry? And why is your countenance fallen? If you do well, won't you be accepted? And if you don't do well, sin lies at your door, and its desire is for you, but you should rule over it. So, and then he went on to kill his brother Abel. So, he should have, humility would have been able to listen. The creator of everything. Okay, let me back up. Did God favor Cain over Abel? No. God wasn't playing favoritism between the two. The creator of life itself was coming to Cain and trying to get him straightened out and talking to him and saying, hey, this is what you need to do, man. You'll be accepted if you'll just do this. Why don't you just do this? And he wouldn't do it. And do you know this? The very first murder that was ever committed was over the tithe. Ain't that something? When you think about it. So God tries to get him straightened out, talks with him. He won't listen. Sin had a desire. It wants to control and rule. And the only way to master sin in your life is through obedience. If he would have just been able to submit himself and listen, he could have mastered what mastered him. He got mastered by sin, and it did rule over him. So, man, if God would just suspend grace for just a minute, and we just realized how much of life we do just on grace, just how much of life is grace, then we would be amazed, at how little we can really accomplish just in and of ourselves. It's not just words in and of yourself. You can do nothing, and you can do some stuff. You can mess some stuff up. You can get into sin. You can, that's really about the extent of what we can do in and of ourselves. So we got to get to this point where we understand that God holds our next breath in his hand. Our next breath is sustained. All things are sustained by the word of his power. And the biggest lie of all of the lies is that we're sufficient, that man is sufficient apart from God. That we are, like the secular humanists say, we were an amoeba and man, we were crawling around in the goo, and man, one day we jumped up out of the goo and grew a tail, climbed up in a tree, learned the ABCs, and we're self-made. I'm a man, and we made ourselves, and we're sufficient. That's the biggest lie of all the lies that the enemy has, is that we are sufficient in and apart from God. Man, we are completely 100% dependent on God, and that's what I want to. I wish I could just morph that into the way you think, but because so many of us, we don't think that way. We think we got ourselves here. We think we're self-made. We think we accomplished this by the power of my might, by my own strength, by my own might. I did this. I am who I am because of who I am. And I'm telling you, man, that is nothing but pride. It's nothing but pride. And it will limit you as to how far God can use you or get you to where he needs to. So, all right. I want to look at now. This is really where I've been trying to get to. I want us to look at some ways, some indicators, and some symptoms of pride. How do we see this stuff? How do we recognize it? How do we, because if you can't see it, then you're never going to be able to get it out of your life. If you don't even know what it looks like, what you're dealing with, then how are you ever going to be able to deal with it? So here's some ways that you can look for, and I don't want you thinking about the people that ain't here. I want you to look in yourself. We're not looking for our wife. We're not looking for our husband. We're not looking for whoever's should be in this room, man. I just want us to look at ourselves, examine ourselves. It's not about, you're only responsible for you. And, so much of the time, man, we want to think about, man, I wish somebody else was here. I wish this person was here. This would really help them. So once you identify pride, you can deal with it. You can't deal with it till you can see it. The more you learn and grow in life, the more you recognize and see, you can see this stuff in your own life. The huge key in being able to recognize and see pride is in John chapter 7 and verse 16. This is Jesus, and why don't you go with me to this scripture, John chapter 7 and verse 16. And Jesus answered them. They've come to him, and they're really impressed with what he's done, what he's been teaching. And man, this is his moment to shine. Man, they're giving him all these accolades, and Jesus answered them, and he said this. He said, "My doctrine is not mine," and you can underline that, "but it's he who sent me. If anyone wills to do his will, he shall know concerning this doctrine whether it's from God or whether I speak on my own authority." And I want you to underline verse 18. "He who speaks from himself seeks his own glory, but he who seeks the glory of the one who sent him is true." And then it goes on to talk about Moses. So pride speaks of itself. Pride is seeking its own glory. Pride is seeking the glory of man. Pride is seeking and wants to impress men. And Jesus said that those that pride, or those that speak from themselves, are seeking their own glory. But yet he said, the one who is true seeks the glory of the one that sent him. And that's what Jesus was always about. He was about seeking the glory of the one who sent him. And pride speaks of itself. It always wants to impress. Pride is an impressor. So we need to ask ourselves these questions. When you find yourself talking about you need to ask yourself this question: why am I trying to impress them with me? Why am I telling them about me right now? About my experiences, about what I've done, about what I've accomplished, about who I am. Pride seeks its own glory. It wants to impress other people with itself. So ask yourself, why am I telling them about me right now? When you find yourself talking about you to other people, ask yourself that question: why am I doing this? And if you're just honest with yourself, a lot of the time it's just because you're seeking to impress them. You're trying to solicit impression from another person. You want that person to be impressed with you. You're seeking your own glory. Or pride, that's what pride does, is it seeks its own glory. And Jesus was just the opposite of this. Man, he was seeking the glory of the one who sent him. So am I trying to impress them with me, Or am I trying to impress them with my God, with my Creator, with the one who, really who sent us, who is sending us, to all different kind of assignments in the earth? Are we trying to impress? When we leave somebody's presence, do we want them thinking about, we really haven't ministered life to that person if we walk away from that and they think, wow, man, that guy was amazing. But if we walk away from that and they don't even really think about me, but they think about, man, God is amazing. If he can do it through that guy's life, then he can do it through my life. He can do it. He can do this for me. I can do this. That's what you want. That's ministering life to somebody. If you can encourage somebody to the point where, man, they feel like they could do it after you get done talking to them, man, you've been successful. You've succeeded in your mission and your assignment to show them that, man, God can do this for them in their life. And if they walk away and they're more confused and than when you talk to them, but they're real impressed with you, I can assure you there was a whole lot of pride that happened in that conversation. So monitor your conversation and ask yourself, why am I talking about that? Is it so I can bless them, or am I seeking to impress them? Pride has to let you know. If it knows something about something, it cannot be quiet. Pride has to let you know. Pride, if it knows, it has to, it has to tell it. It can't be quiet. Pride cannot be quiet. It has to let you know. It has to let you know, well, yeah, I know something about that, and probably more than you do. It has to, man, well, I got 3 of them at home, and one of them's a rare one. It can't be impressed with what you're talking about and what you have. It's always got to let you know. Well, I've been there, and beyond. Pride is always, it can never be quiet. It has to let you know what it knows. Pride is a name dropper. Pride will let you. It'll be like, well, we don't wear suits around here, but man, that's a nice suit. Well, yeah, it's a so and so, and I got it at such and such, and I was with so and so when I got it. It's always, pride is a name dropper. Pride wants you to impress. It's soliciting an impression from you. It wants you to be impressed with it. Pride can't be quiet. It has to let you know what it is, what it's done, what it's had, where it's been, and it's always beyond what you've done. I want you guys to understand that this is something that God takes very seriously. This whole pride issue, and I want you to also know that just the pride of life itself, it's our fallen nature. This stuff is inside all of us, and it doesn't just automatically leave your life because you got saved. It doesn't. You just didn't arrive at humility and relieve yourself of all your pride the moment you said yes to Jesus. That didn't happen. There's still plenty of pride in our life that we have to deal with on a daily basis, and I mean it's at every juncture in our life. It's at every success. It's at every encounter, really, with every other person. It's always something, and if we're unaware of it, if we can't recognize it, if we can't see it, then we can't get it out of our life. God hates it. It's an abomination to him. He despises it. And it causes us to be, man, in a place where we're being resisted by God and not able to tap into this grace that he wants us to walk in. So when we're looking at these things here, I'm not trying to be mean about this, but I do want you to honestly look at your own life and ask yourself, evaluate your own self. How do you handle being ignored? Or let me ask you this: are you unhappy unless people notice you? Humility doesn't bother humility. It could care less whether you notice me or whether it doesn't. Or do you have to, when you walk in, everything has to stop, and the music should stop? Oh, they're here, right? Man, people think that though. Are you fashionably late? Do you have to make an entrance? Do you have to be noticed? Pride does. Pride has to be noticed. It can't be where humility is just the opposite. It could care less whether you notice me or whether you don't. All right, let me give you a couple real quick. How do you respond when you're made to look bad? Often, man, people get angry, they're upset, they're embarrassed, they're offended. Proverbs says only by pride comes contention. Only by pride is where contention comes from. Anger is just that, man. It's often just a manifestation of pride. Why are you so angry? Why are you so? Pride is defensive. Pride is an arguer. It has to. It'll argue over nothing. Can you just humble yourself and say, yeah, that's the way it is? Or do you get mad, make excuses, or even lie about it? Are you embarrassed to the point where you lie about it, try to cover it up? This anger and pride if it's made to look less than what it thinks its image is projected to, that people should think about it, then it'll lie. It'll go to the point of where it lies about it. Do you always have to share your opinion, your view? We talked about that a little bit. Your view, your revelation, your understanding, your experience. Man, the Bible says that we're to be quick to hear, slow to speak. Pride is not a good listener. Pride can't listen with intent and be interested in what anybody else has to say. Pride is only interested in what it has to say. Pride is only, somebody will act like they're listening to you, but really they got their guns loaded they're loading their guns behind their back, and they're just waiting for you to breathe to interject what they've got to say. Pride can't listen. Pride is not a good listener. Whereas humility can show an interest in being in pride. Here's another one. Pride can't be impressed with what somebody else has accomplished. Pride can't show impression. I can't be impressed with what you've done or what you've accomplished. Whereas humility can readily admit, man, that's pretty good. Man, pride can't ask questions. How'd you do that? Humility has no problem. Say, what, you lost 40 pounds or 50 pounds, whatever. How'd you do that? Pride can't ask that question. It'd rather choke. Pride can't ask for directions. There's a Are you always trying to promote yourself and be seen by the right people? The Bible says, man, if you'll humble yourself, He will exalt you in due time. He'll lift you up. God will lift you up. The promotion comes from above. You're not looking for man to promote you or to exalt you. You're looking for God to exalt you and promote you. Pride is this is funny right now because this could apply to me. Pride is an assumer. Pride assumes that you want to hear what I got to say. You ever been there? Man, somebody's just going on and on and on about something, and everybody else is like, man, just shut up. We don't want to hear about that anymore, and everybody else realizes it. But pride is so dull, it doesn't even see, it can't even recognize that they're not even listening. They're checked out, man. They're not even, and I felt like that a little bit tonight, but fact is, man, I'm going to push through. But the pride just assumes, though, that, man, they're hanging on every word. But pride assumes that of its exploits, of my exploits before I ever show up. And if you're not aware, then you're just be anxious to hear about them. Pride is an assumer. Pride assumes that you're going to be interested in me. Pride assumes that you want to hear about what I've done, what I've accomplished, what I've been able to do. And man, I've got 20 more, but I just didn't have enough time to do this justice tonight. But guys, I really do appreciate you. I love you, And I'll see you soon. Have a good one.